let's get into the big topic of open source, something that we actually say at Red Hat.
This is so awesome.
We are an open culture that believes in
What is that process that a developer, or let's say,
as the Kubernetes ecosystem really boomed?
All right. Sorry for the late start. And good afternoon, GitOpsians. I am very tired today. I have to. Jesse's gonna make fun of me. My brain is not doing the brain things. Last couple mornings I've had 6:30 a.m. meetings, and I'm just like, we had 4 hours of me being smart, and like our limits exceeded. We're almost down to just like delirious and silly now. I'm personally a big proponent of the afternoon nap. Like, I love an afternoon nap, so I will do that after this. But it's a hair early for nap time for me yet. It's even too early for nap time for Jesse's cat, who is awake in the background there. But anyway, today's episode, I've talked about this a little bit. We've promised to talk about it at length. So I brought Jesse back to keep me honest, and we're gonna talk to people about how Red Hat does SRE and how GitOps is involved in that, or rather how we leverage GitOps for it. So I'm going to talk about what my former team used to do, talk about what some of the sister teams used to do, or actually still do rather. And the cool part is a lot of our GitOps stuff is actually open source, so we're actually going to be able to show you like where you can see some of the how we do what we do. I've talked about this before. SRE at Red Hat operates under restricted RBAC, so we're going to take you through that. But before we get there, just a reminder that ArgoCon is in Mountain View, California, September 19th through 21st. I will be there. And other Red Hatters will be there as well. And it'll be a fun GitOps related convention. So hi, Christian. Christian will be there, right? Christian will be there. So we'll get the dynamic duo back together. We'll take picture or something. Prove that we saw each other. And this is cool. This is local to me, right? I don't have to travel for this conference far. I have to drive an hour, but you know, that's life in California. You have to drive everywhere. So yeah, Jesse, just for folks who may not have seen you last time or may have forgotten, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Jesse Sarnovsky. I'm the team lead for Cloud Services SRE at Red Hat, working for the same team that Hill formerly, I guess, worked on.
Yeah, I'm still kind of between the teams, right? But yeah, I think at this point, like I posted on LinkedIn, we're down to the last few weeks of my transition from CSSRE into the Strategic Enablement and Architecture Group, or C. And if people follow me on LinkedIn or looked at my LinkedIn, you'll notice that I've actually posted my job title is Chief Mermaid. That is my actual business card title until they make me change it, which I don't think they will. But they said I could pick my business card title, and I felt like Chief Mermaid has always been an aspiration for me. So I naturally chose that as my business card title. So Chief Mermaid, I am in the C-suite. Yeah, I did that. You're welcome. And yeah, like I say, I just, navigating the choppy waters at sea. I also lean very, very heavily into every single like nautical or pirate pun that I can related to this. Wait, I'm sorry. Who will be my VP of Choral Relations? No comments. So that's what's going on our side of the house. And I already, truthfully, reorgs are always a very interesting time, rather moving organizations is always an interesting time. So I feel like I'm already so out of touch with what I used to do, and I'm still technically doing it day to day. So like I said, Jesse's here to keep me honest. That way I don't forget any of the important things about how SRE has been using GitOps. Is very technically, I'm not going to be an SRE anymore, but I still don't have a better job title than Principal Reliability Engineer, because I'm still doing reliability engineering. It's just on the before the pager exists side of the house. So that said, let's just get to it, right? Yes.
Sure. Go for it.
I'm actually going to share my screen, something I don't ever do, I've noticed on this stream. And we're actually, I don't want to start on that window. We're going to start on this window. Okay, so let's talk about RBAC real quick. Right, role-based access control. And Jesse, I'll let you keep me honest. Like I said, also, I maybe be the smart person in the room today. I'm just a mermaid in a fishbowl. That's where we're at.
The puns aren't going to stop people. They aren't going to stop, I promise.
He hates me so much right now. He has been putting up with this for weeks, by the way. I am shameless. I have perfected some of my puns over the last couple of weeks. Some of them started out like less cringy, and I figured out ways to make them more cringy. Oh yeah, swag. I forgot to talk about our swag just real quick. Red Hat did release GitOps Guide to the Galaxy swag. And so here's the coffee mug. Oops. Best part about it is it's the picture on the both sides. Why is that the best part? Because I'm left-handed. And so I'm always holding coffee mugs, and you can't see the design on my coffee mug. It's facing me. But when folks print the designs on both sides of the mug, then when I'm holding a coffee mug, the design also is outward facing. And then we also have our t-shirts. These exist in the Cool Stuff store for folks who are interested in purchasing their own. I've heard rumors that they are being given out at conferences. So the coffee mugs were at VMware Explore in San Francisco last week. So if you're attending a conference and there is a Red Hat presence, stop by the booth maybe, and you could luck into some swag. But yeah, so since I now remember, Jesse picked up his coffee mug and had a drink, and I remembered I forgot to talk about the swag. I also am very tired. I think I mentioned.
Sixth time, I think. Yeah, I'll keep.
We're.
I'll keep honest.
There's not enough coffee in the world today. I have like the shakes, and it hasn't helped me wake up at all at this point. So we're just. This is where we are. But I did want to talk about this RBAC thing, right? So role-based access control. And so what this means is we're SREs for managed services running on OpenShift Dedicated, right? OpenShift Dedicated is a managed version of OpenShift. OpenShift being Red Hat's opinionated Kubernetes. One of the biggest opinions that OpenShift has to do with security, right? You can't run like pods as root, for example. Like the security in OpenShift is very, very, very big built-in opinion, the security contexts. So we kind of continue with that opinions into even our own production access when running production support. So we actually define our production support access, or RBAC, in Git, right? And like I said, this is a public repo. If you want to go look, you can just go look. And so then this defines, and who is in these groups is like, that's on the like locked down inside of the house. You can't see that. Who is in these groups, the actual management of these groups that are defined here, all of that is done internally as well. Also through GitOps that links into some other systems. That way, if somebody leaves, their access is revoked. But the general, like, who has access and what do they do, you can actually see it here. And it's all declarative, right? We define it with some YAML. I'm trying to think about what is the best one of these to look at. Right. And so it basically just have levels of our permissions, what we actually have access to. So we're actually namespace restricted in our access as well as action restricted. So that means not only can I only really see certain namespaces, but then within those namespaces, I can only do certain things. That's another one. Hang on. Sorry. I'm looking for the one that has all of our verbs. Yeah. Where are those verbs? I never remember it off the top of my head. Nope, that one's also good though. But anyway, you know, I've had to modify these so much. You would think that I would actually remember where the verbs are, but no, I don't.
So essentially, in the files are like she said, namespaces or a namespace pattern to match verbs as in actions. Like we can do get, we can do edit, and then there's targets which relevant to those. So you can only access get pods, get stateful sets, something like that. I'm sure there's examples somewhere.
Yeah, I know, right? I'm like, where are the verbs? I felt like I would be able to very quickly go to it, and now I cannot remember, right? If we have to do anything, so this is actually a namespace for us. If we have to do something like spin up a special debug pod or anything like that, which is a super rare occurrence, but has happened in the past, this is where we're allowed to do that. So again, all of our access is very it's very strictly defined. But occasionally you have to do things that require more access than you have by default, right? And so we've solved for that too. This is called managed scripts. And backplane is our method of accessing clusters. That's just the name of the tool. So this actual set of scripts, it enables us to have access that might sometimes exceed our RBAC because it doesn't actually, so the script has a higher level of access than the person using the script, right? So we can write scripts that enable CEE to get things like additional logging they may not otherwise have by default. And there's like a process that the logs can go through to like obfuscate anything that would be particularly sensitive, but then it doesn't actually increase the CEE production access. They just have access to the ability to run the script. And again, people who are in the CEE group, the people in that group, that's all audited and everything and GitOpsified off in the secret side of the house, right? That's behind the protections of Red Hat. But generally speaking, you know, we like to think that we have put in some best practices into our approach, and we open source like everything, right? It's I was honestly a little surprised. I was like planning this episode. I was like, how much of this can I very easily talk about without having to go into just straight only talking about it conceptually? And the answer is I can talk about most of it explicitly because it's all just here available on the public internet. And I've actually sent this off to folks to show. This is just an example of a script that we've put out. And I've actually sent this to folks to show to customers too, because sometimes our customers have that question like, okay, I see this comes with SRE support, but what can SRE do? Right. And it is somewhat defined in our documentation that we show, but it's a little less explicit. And it's honestly like you can see what SRE can do. You can see what we might be doing and how we might be doing, more or less how we might be doing it. Because we let it all be, you know, open and available to you to look at. So that I think goes along. It's part of our, I think, the general Red Hat strategy of transparency and building trust. So we're not afraid to basically say, hey, this is how we've done things. And we're not afraid to change things if we think we can be doing things better, right? Jesse, you've been at Red Hat 7 years?
7.5 almost, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, we're just gonna round to 7. So you've been at Red Hat 7 years, so you've seen this more than I have, right? But we didn't used to. Some years ago, our method of accessing production was actually different, right?
Yeah, particularly back with OpenShift Dedicated 3, the rules were, I mean, we didn't have the professional backplane concept and stuff like that. So it was much different before. But when it came to OpenShift 4, this stuff is honestly monumentally better. Completely logged, everything's there, auditable. Highly sophisticated compared to what it used to be, I guess 6 years ago or something.
Yeah. I had the very interesting experience of because of when I joined Red Hat and the team, I had the very interesting experience of learning OpenShift 3 and 4 at the same time. Now that we're not actively supporting anything in OpenShift 3 anymore, I fortunately have been able to better create separation in my head. But you'll remember from working incidents with me a few times, Jesse, where I'd be like, wait a minute, can't we just do like XYZ? And you'd be like, no, wrong OpenShift. And I'd be like, dang it, you know?
Yep. The different managed products, had different versions for. I mean, we had an overlap of what 2.5 years or so. We were supporting managed applications on both those. So
yeah, the entire first year I was here was still fully into supporting both OpenShift 3 and OpenShift 4 every day. So and yes, I will say the thing that sort of made it easier to keep track of which had which features was the fact that we had the better access model for OpenShift 4, right? That we've had this. Kind of some important cool things about this. We reuse service accounts, right? So all of our RBAC is tied to service accounts. And that also allows all of our auditing to be tied to the same service accounts, right? So we're able to define these service accounts and then authenticate as a person who belongs to that service account when I'm as myself, and that checks that I'm somebody who deserves to have, like, not just who am I employed at Red Hat at, who is active, but also an employee at Red Hat who's active, who is supposed to have this level of access, and that I am who I say I am because I've gone through our various layers of authentication, right? I have to authenticate a couple times and dual authentication. So that's all like very cool. But we're not using anything extremely unusual. We're not adding anything super special to the mix, right? This service accounts are just built in. So we're able to just like leverage OpenShift itself, like in ways that almost anybody could do. You could realistically recreate our pattern here. Is what I'm saying. We haven't added anything special to OpenShift dedicated to enable this that you couldn't do yourself. So yeah, managed scripts. What do these do, right? I want to talk about the advantages of managed scripts. And Jesse, I think you've been more. I feel like I kind of handed down the we're doing managed scripts to the team, and you actually had to like deal with the implementation of what that meant to do the managed scripts to the team, right? This was a set of way of building and standardizing tooling across Red Hat created by the team that did the backplane access. So like big shout out to them, by the way, for the really, really, really big efforts here. Like this was significant work on their part. They had to talk to a lot of people and learn from a lot of people. And I showed up to their planning meetings and ruined their days sometimes by like saying, bad news, that's not going to work for the layered products group. You need to change things. Like huge shout out to them for the sheer just volume of people and use cases they've had to figure out how to accommodate in doing this for us. And the fact that they've been able to keep so much of it still open source while doing that. So like, I don't want to embarrass people by calling them out by name, but I'm going to do it anyway. So like Christoph and Harun are like, just like off the top of my head, like two of the most important people for the backplane effort, but like way more people than just that. And they're going to go like find out the hard way. Somebody's going to tell them I mentioned them now, but I'm not going to do it. So maybe they won't feel embarrassed, but yeah, backplane team did great. But let's actually talk about the implementation of the managed scripts a little bit, because like we have it here, right? And you can actually see that we've actually created like SREP is the platform SRE, right? When they make these scripts to handle incidents, I like to say, hey, it actually can decrease our MTTR, or mean time to resolve. But I'd like you to expand on that a little bit, like in terms of what it means and like the reality of incident management.
Frankly, a lot of the things that we end up having as a managed script are something we've actually done in production. You know, honestly, if it's happened to 2 or 3 times in production, we've had to do something, or we had to escalate privileges or something, or had to do some special handling, we immediately flag that as something that makes sense to become a managed script, to basically simplify the process. Frankly, some SOPs get to be 20 or 30 steps in some cases, and putting them into a managed script where you just run one thing, it collects all the output, puts it all together. You don't have to escalate privileges, anything like that. It just runs, other people can run it, and it's very selective. So it's very important that, these things are safe from injection attacks where parameters are just dynamically created and can do bad things with the wrong permissions. But anytime it's something that we repetitively do, it makes sense to become a managed script. And several people on my team have recognize that, hey, we should just make this a managed script. And before we even bother writing a SOP, it's easier to make a managed script for this. But we do have the SOPs to back it up in case there's a problem running those managed scripts. So once we have it thoroughly defined, it makes sense to turn it into a script just like this.
Yeah. I just pulled up this one. I was actually looking for, and I know it exists in one of these because I've used it, right? I was looking for the must gather, right? Must gather is probably like the managed script, right?
It's in CEE, right?
I thought so, but I didn't see it. But I could also be blind.
No, maybe not.
Yeah, I know, right? I know it's here somewhere because I used it.
Most common one used.
Most common one used. I can't remember where it is.
It's interesting.
Why can't I find it? Oh well, I'm tired. I'm not hurting my brain any further than this. Right, but so must gather is an interesting one, right? We call it must gather because it's basically everything we think you need to get from a cluster experiencing some sort of like critical incident, right? Something major, especially if it's not immediately obvious what's wrong. Like multiple alerts are firing, right? Your very first step should be a must gather at that point. And basically what we do with that, the reason I say that it can reduce the mean time to resolve is even though the script takes a good while to run and gather everything it needs, like we're talking logs and it'll get descriptions of things and it'll get like etcd health and other stuff. The most important thing about that is you can it will run in the background, right? So you can have it running in the background while you're still actively doing your manual investigation into things. So the fact, like the usage of the managed scripts, the ability to fire them off, they run as a job, right? It's a Kubernetes job, so it'll run as a Kubernetes job on the cluster, and then you can basically kind of check back when it's done. It'll give you a pod identifier from which you can get the output of the script, like what the logs it create or what files did it create and so forth. And from there, you can, if you need to copy them off into other locations, you can. So,
must gather is more like a snapshot of all the things that say, because frankly, if you're looking into a new issue, particularly something you don't already have a SOP for, you don't know what you're necessarily gathering. And must gather is taking all that data, putting it together. You might find later that, once you fix the issue, you can still refer to those logs that were collected and actually understand what happened at that point in time. So very important process.
Yeah. Like I said, it does take a while to run, but the fact is it runs as a job, and it allows you to continue. It basically allows important investigation and gathering to happen while you continue the manual investigation. Because if you had to stop and get all those pieces by hand, you would spend 2 hours just getting those pieces by hand, and your investigation into the incident wouldn't have gone any further. So it's, like Jesse said, very, very important first step that we do. Something similar, I would say, like if you're trying to figure out how to do SRE for the first time, like that's a great starting place as well. Did my phone is like blowing up. Are you all hearing my chocobo? Do I need to like hide? No.
Okay. I like the sound of chocobo though. I would tell you. I'm sure you're making a smile on my face. I can't hear it.
There definitely been past streams where somebody's like, "What is that?" It's like, it's my text message alert is the chocobo chirp from Final Fantasy. So, and there are some past streams where I'm like, "Oh, you can hear my phone go off in that stream," and it's like it's gone off 3 times today. So I'm like, I can silence it, but like I also don't want to be really rude midstream and lean down and silence my phone because I forgot to do it ahead of time. So if you guys can't hear it, I'll just continue to ignore it. Wait, sorry. I'm just reading our Hope 9's comment. The 5 minutes when the cluster works fine is like more important than the 5 hours on a cluster where with SDN etcd issues, and that can be a challenge. Yeah. Yeah. It's
just hearing etcd, thinking, when etcd is running slow, nothing's quick to gather. I think is what we're trying to point out there.
Yeah, no, it's if something's wrong with etcd, right, your whole API server might be unresponsive or lagging in response and everything else like that. Correct me if I'm wrong, I think our must gather script actually can account for that though, right?
Couldn't tell you.
some of our stuff does. Some of our stuff, and I don't know off the top of my head which ones do and which ones don't, but some of our stuff does actually account for when there is a some sort of pressure. Because there still will be some retries and stuff built in, but that's the point, right? Of doing it in this way and having a standardized set of scripts available to people to use is that you can write them to account for things like disk pressure or API server flakiness or some of the other things that are going on. So, and again, like the most important part about the way we do things is most amount of actions, least amount of access. People have heard me talk about this and say this. If you've heard me talk at all, I say it all the time. I think I stole that from somebody. I guarantee you I stole that from somebody. That's not, I did not invent that. I'm not even sure I invented the use of as a verb, although I think I'm credited with it. Like, so when you have an out of memory event on a pod, right? It's like, the I say it's ing, and I use it as a verb because it's delightful. But anyway, most amount of actions, least amount of access, and the way we've done this here with these managed scripts enables that. And again, everything is tied to service accounts, and these are mechanisms that just exist that are totally reusable. But there's some things that we do right with GitOps that are not actually like captured here in the public that we gotta have to talk about like a little bit more conceptually. Part of it is though, so we're gonna go over here. I've joked before that you should never anger app SRE because they'll turn off Quay, right? And you're like, well, who's app SRE? Well, app SRE is one of our SRE teams that supports some of the managed services like Quay, and they do others. And the way they've done this is through something called App Interface. App Interface is not fully open source, but we do have some pieces of it out here for the public to look at. So again, we're trying to make our patterns available for people so they can kind of see how we're doing things. And I'm not saying that everything we've done is always perfect, but they've definitely been working. So Quay or Key, yes, okay. Everybody I know calls it Quay. If anybody else calls it Key, I've never heard it except for occasionally in like questions like this on the stream, or I think there was a memo list thread about this, whether it was Quay or Key. I think there was. Everybody I know calls it Quay. Jesse, have you ever heard it called Key?
I probably 4 out of 150 times, whatever. So I'd say it's probably in the 1 to 2 percentile of Key. And I'll be honest, all of those people are in Europe that I can think of. I don't know if that's a thing or something different about Europe, and probably closer to UK, possibly.
It's a French word, according to our Hope 9.
Oh, then maybe that's it. So I feel like they're in that geo. I'm used to working with a lot of different time zones, so kind of gray area.
The first rule about memo lists is we don't mention memo list. I have violated that rule so many times. That's the best kept secret of Red Hat, in that it's the worst kept secret of Red Hat. I think I actually have memo list famous on my resume.
I feel like I should be inquiring about that. I don't think that will kind of deviate from the goal of this talk here.
No, we were actually putting together profile, like this is like we were putting together profiles of people who have maybe like less SRE like backgrounds, who have made good SREs. And I mention all the time that literally right before I became an SRE, I was a quality engineer. So I actually updated my resume for the profiling thing that we're doing. And I actually asked a few people across Red Hat for their resumes as well to do the same kind of a thing, because we're trying to, this goes into like the whole job family thing and trying to like identify how to continue to find great talent, right? I've actually even had conversations with talent acquisition, or like, hey, can we use the streams to help attract talent? And I was like, you guys should definitely join the comments of our streams, because occasionally there's people interested in how to become an SRE or a developer or a sysadmin or whomever at Red Hat. And like, yeah, totally. But yes, so every now and again I get involved in things like that because I really care about hiring and our talent pool. And so, yeah, I updated my resume for that, and I threw that in there as a joke to see if anybody noticed. And since the people who went over that probably watched the stream, I don't think anybody's going to notice. I don't think they're reading the resume that closely, to be honest with you. I think they're just pulling out the keywords. So anyway, but that's officially on my resume for giggles. If I ever have to actually use that resume, I'll probably take it off. So, right, app interface. We're going back to the actual topic at hand. This is important. This is app interface. Developers who have created managed services at Red Hat are familiar with app interface. And so it has basically the idea is that you use OpenShift templates to define an application, and then it takes over from there, right? It has CICD, and you can actually even use it to build the artifacts, although you don't have to, because if you build your artifacts and you define your images and you put them in something like Quay, right? Then you just tell the YAML, hey, this is the registry where my image is, and you give it the manifest, and it actually promotes manifests, right? So this is really impactful for us because this is the way our managed services that we SRE are delivered. One of the ways that our managed services that we SRE are delivered. And one of the other really important things about it is that OpenShift tells us, what is this, 2015? Christian, today, I swear. I'm not even with you, man. I'm not even with you. OpenShift templates are fine. Not even. Right. So the other things we do, and Jesse, I'm going to need you to talk about this part especially, right? Because I don't remember this super well already. I feel super divorced from it. We actually can do like cluster scaling and sharding through app interface and through the GitOps model. And I just want you to high level walk us through what some of that looks like, so that I don't have to be the smart person in the room.
Okay. Yeah. So in app interface, honestly, if you think about it, we have pretty much everything modeled in a GitOps form. I mean, users, teams, like you said, the repos being used, the services themselves, and often those services will have some sort of configuration file, like SaaS kind of configuration file that defines what makes sense for that product. So frankly, every product can be different with the values they use. I mean, they could be arbitrary. In some of our managed services, whatever, we actually have like the individual clusters involved for, I don't know if everyone would understand, like control plane versus data plane, but we'd have a list of what clusters are involved, the IDs for them, potentially what size they are, either in terms of instances of the instances of a product specific thing, such as like managed Kafka instances on there, as well as what regions they're in, even defining new regions. All that stuff can be defined within one of the SAS files. And then again, they're very product specific. So for managed Kafka is probably the best example we'd have of where we've really utilized that concept, and virtually everything can be configured with just a few settings in there. Once the cluster is connected, most changes are done purely from there, from a modification to the SAS file, and letting it roll out in about 10, 15 minutes. Everything pretty much reconciles. I think one of those tabs you have is about is it contract reconcile or contract?
Yeah, that's
reconcile, one. That thing. So now I cannot speak with like authoritative stuff on it, but the contract thing or whatever is basically like commitment to what the service will do or what the automation will do based on changes made to those files. And the reconcile is essentially a reconcile loop, much like an operator, but it's working through various CI/CD systems, Jenkins, stuff like that. And that will roll those changes out through various systems. Hopefully that gives a general overview without getting too complicated.
Yeah, it also manages, so there's certain integrations. I mentioned this earlier, right? There's a standard observability stack for apps to find an app interface, right? And so it handles that integration as well. And that's all done through the same basic pieces here, the reconcile, so that you can actually see some of it, some of what it does over here. It does like a lot of things. It actually does a lot of things. One of the really important things to how we do everything is Hive, right? So Hive is a tool that Red Hat has developed to basically manage and keep synchronized a fleet. So when we say that we treat our clusters like pets, or like cattle, not pets, Hive enables that, right? I know. I mean, my dyslexic self reversing everything. Dyslexia plus sleep deprivation means that you get all of the right words in all of the wrong order, and it completely changes the meaning. Cattle, not pets. That's what we're on about. And Hive allows us to do that, right? But Hive itself it's app interface, things defined in app interface, right? Hive actually will do the synchronization of applications and so forth across the OpenShift dedicated fleet for things in app interface or one of our other methods of defining managed services or managed apps. But Hive itself is also defined in app interface and then supported by the app SRE team as keeping it highly available as a service that is really the backbone of a lot of this, right? If I need to, even like the changes to the RBAC stuff gets propagated out actually through the Hive, updating the configurations on the entire fleet of clusters. The scale of it is tremendous. I was actually just asking the Hive team stupid questions yesterday because I was like, I have stupid questions because I think I know some stuff about Hive, and there's some things I don't think I know well about Hive. And they're super nice, a very, very, very cool group of people. And they answered my stupid questions. But yeah, so we use this ourselves, right? Very extensively. And that's the way that that's the way that the something gets made. I don't remember the idiom. My brain's dead. My brain's real dead.
What you're referring to? Sorry, I can't help you.
There's like a somebody help me out.
That's not what you're looking for. You're looking for how the hot dogs are made. I think is one of the things. Something
pizza?
like that.
I don't know.
Whatever.
You know what? I give up. Stephanie's offering to save me from myself here because I've lost my expression. It's okay. It's okay, Stephanie. We're fine. But yeah, I actually am going to pull up though. Speaking of things, I'm going to actually pull up Hive because it's in the OpenShift. I got a new keyboard. It's super sausage. It's how this.
Thank you. That's what I was looking for. Close with hot dogs. I had the right idea.
Thank you, Martin. You're my hero. I can't even remember where that's from. Somebody else. He probably also knows that. Again, some people who are smarter than me bailing me out. I appreciate you, Red Hatters, so much. Right. This is Hive, right? Also public, also open source. And it's very cool. It does a lot of very neat things in a lot of very neat places, and it's in a lot of ways it's our backbone. It's very, very critical piece of our infrastructure. So hopefully the Hive team appreciates they shout out here because they do deserve it. But yeah, so this is how a lot of the GitOps changes that we're talking about that we will do get actually like propagated to the target clusters is through the usage of Hive. Definition of a stupid question: something you already very familiar with and obviously know the answer to. That never saves me. I still ask stupid questions all the time. Like, I should know this, but I don't remember. So I'm going to ask it anyway. And then somebody will tell me, be like, oh, that's right. And suddenly I will have all that information at my fingertips. But my brain doesn't always do the brain things. And I have decided in my old age that I'm not going to pretend to remember things or know things when I don't. And I'm just going to ask. And my life is much better and far more stress-free because of that. I'm telling you. Right. So that basically, I think, covers the majority of the ways that we interact with GitOps day to day. Did I miss anything, Jesse?
I mean, we could probably work in some of the things that you wouldn't expect necessarily that we would do through GitOps stuff would be like even resizing volumes for some of our products, whatever, changing the size of volumes. We actually have even those defined in a repository where changes are made there and they're rolled out. So even if we had to make changes like that, we'd still use the same GitOps processes to do very simple changes as well as some very complicated changes, and they're all orchestrated. In that case, mostly through OpenShift, through the control plane, through OpenShift. I don't know. Other than that, I think we've covered as best we can. It's hard to fit it in as small of a slot. So.
Yeah, and it's also one of those things where like I don't have a great way of getting hands on keyboard and showing this. So there's that's just it. I do want to find. All right, the managed cluster config. I'm like going back to this. I'm like, there's actually a lot of other stuff in managed cluster config as well, not just our RBAC, which is, I think, a kind of. I didn't really touch those at all. That's kind of important. I get most excited about our RBAC being here, but there's actually a lot of other things that go into the managed cluster config and into the way that we manage our fleet. That all comes back down to these Git repos and the pipelines and jobs that do things based on the changes that exist here. So, like I said, these things are, if you just go look at the OpenShift, right? Everything we do is open source, right? Just go look at OpenShift. There's a lot. There's a lot here to go take a look at if you're curious about how we do things. I think like it's kind of like my favorite thing about this job is I'm like, I don't have to, like, it's very easy for me to talk about it because of the fact that it's all right here. So like feel free to like fork things if you want to, right? That's what they're there for. Play around with it. There's all kinds of really cool things in here. But like I said, my favorite thing in this managed cluster config is actually the RBAC. The fact that we don't just run around with cluster admin and that we have restricted access to protect the workloads being run on the clusters from basically like really whatever. There's always, you always say that you're protecting from bad actors, but that's realistically like only half the story. The other half is that you're just protecting from accidents, right? That somebody accidentally doing something like using a star regex in the wrong place, and suddenly you're trying to delete things across everywhere instead of in like this one particular place, right? So the fact that we're operating with a restricted RBAC creates that layer of protection against human error. The fact that we are codifying things into scripts when it needs higher levels of permissions, that allows us to take actually more access away from the service accounts and adds in even better layers of protections. These are basically, I would say, like solid patterns that I would recommend people look into. And I have definitely been asked this question by folks before, like, do you guys use cluster admin? And the answer is no, we don't use cluster admin. And in OpenShift, there's a concept of dedicated admin. We're not even running with dedicated admin either, right? We have our RBAC is custom and restricted and has some admin functionalities, but not all of them. And that just kind of gives everybody a higher degree of confidence that no matter what we're doing, we're only doing it in the places we're supposed to do it, which is great because incidents are stressful enough without having to double check some of that stuff. I think we might end up possibly ending this a little bit early today, which is fine. But before we do end, I want to invite Stephanie to reveal herself from the background. I think she said she might be persuaded to do that for us today. Woo. If I can stop sharing my screen. Where is my? There it is.
Okay, definitely. Hold on, let me. I sat down for a second. So.
I always keep Stephanie on her toes.
Yeah, sorry, it's glitchy today. It's the okay, here we go. And now I'm gonna talk. It's the last show or my last show this week. 1 second. There we go. Kind of standing up now.
All right. Are you in the rally tower?
Yes. Here we go. Let me change screens.
The
Yeah.
production central.
Yes.
So folks who've been watching the other streams have probably already seen Stephanie like pop in to those. I actually haven't had a chance to watch the other streams. I feel really bad. I haven't gotten there yet this week. But like you mentioned, it's actually your last this is our last stream with you as our producer on the GitOps guide.
Yes. Unfortunately it is, but I really enjoyed. I'm so glad I got to be a part of Hilliary coming onto the show. It's been great.
Yeah. Would not have been able to do this at all without you. I'm still a little scared. I know you're not going far, right? You're not leaving Red Hat or
No.
anything so drastic. You're just doing other slightly more high profile things these days.
More streaming, more shows on the YouTube channel, but you know how the org change, everyone's roles have shifted in the last few weeks. So
yeah.
yeah.
Big changes all across the entire company, really. But we're still gonna keep streaming. Stephanie may occasionally still just like drop in the comments and say hi. She'll pull a Christian. She'll come in the comments just to give me grief.
And I still have access to Restring, so I might just jump in.
Yeah, that would be. Oh man, I'd be over the moon excited if you did that. If you just like bombed the stream one day, it would be amazing. But yeah, so I just kind of like thank you, Stephanie. I appreciate you. You have been an absolutely amazing producer. And I just want everybody to just like give Stephanie a little bit of love and appreciation right now because she's been awesome.
Thank you all. I appreciate it. I love doing this, so it's nothing. It's fun.
Yay. Well, I'm glad. Okay, so coming up, next stream in 2 weeks will be right after ArgoCon, right? So we'll go ahead and we will talk a little bit about ArgoCon, but we also have a really cool next stream coming up. I don't know if I've talked to you all about this, Jesse, because I feel like I've talked to everybody about this. And sort of emerging technology at Red Hat called UOR, or Universal Object Representation. Yeah, so Martin knows what I'm talking about because he was at DevConf in Boston where I learned about this. And so we'll be joined by Jen Power and Alex Flom in 2 weeks. God, I hope I said his last name right. I should have double checked that. In 2 weeks to talk about this, which I think is very cool. Because it's taking a lot of the principles of GitOps and it's applying, or like the themes, and it's applying them in new ways. So I hope that everybody will join for that stream, learn about something cool. I think they have a demo for us. If you go hunt down the DevConf recordings from this year, somewhere in there is Alex and Andrew Block talking about it as well, so you could get a cool sneak preview. But I'm hoping we're gonna get to go in a little bit more depth on some of the pieces next time. And so this is also I don't have any immediate plans to drag Jesse along for the ride, so I'm not alone in my fishbowl in the near future. So we're also just gonna quickly say thank you, Jesse, for making me be not alone in my fishbowl the last 2 weeks. I still have to decide if I'm getting a co-host or what, because I hate talking to myself or talking to like the appearance of nothing.
Oh, come on. Thank you for having me these past 2 streams. That's been awesome. I find it hard to believe you don't like talking or hearing yourself talk. That's all right.
Wow. Wow.
No, I don't mean that in a bad way.
Mm-hmm.
Let me put it another way. I've never seen you afraid to speak in front of people. Maybe is a better way of saying it. Not necessarily you want to hear yourself talk, but you're definitely more public speaking than me.
Right. Anyway, so that said, I will, if you're going to be there in person, I will see you folks at ArgoCon later this month. I'll see you folks back here in 2 weeks for our next stream. Jesse, I will just see you like later today or something, probably. And Stephanie, you're my favorite.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I know I can come back on and you can just teach me GitOps. That'll
That'd
be
be
a
awesome.
long, tedious, drawn out episode.
Do you
We can do
already
that.
know how to use the command line, or are we just starting straight from there?
I know how to use the command line to a certain extent.
Oh, there we go.
Okay, yeah.
The
there we-
MS DOS prompt.
Oh, don't get started on MS DOS again. We got yelled at last. For 31 flavors of Microsoft.
Yeah, 31 flavors of Microsoft. That did end up slightly happening. That's what happens when you ask people to reminisce about their first operating systems. That was my mistake in that prompt. But yeah, I'm just go ahead and end us 6 minutes early. I have no shame about that. I'm so tired today, folks. I will say thank you everybody for joining. Thank you, Jesse, for joining. Stephanie, again, you're my favorite. And I will remind everybody, as per usual, hey folks, choose your technical debt wisely. Yeah? Yeah. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.